The U.S. has ordered the families of its diplomats in Ukraine to leave the country. Non-essential staff have also been told to leave. In the next hour, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is set to brief EU foreign ministers on moves to defuse tensions with Russia over the crisis. More on that in a moment, but first, this report.
The U.S. issues an official alert ordering the families of diplomats to leave Ukraine. Washington warns of its limited capacity to help Americans in the event of a Russian invasion. In Kiev, volunteers are joining the effort to defend their country. Still, in the capital, opinions vary on just how big a threat Russia poses.
I am very worried. Things are not easy in our country at this moment. But I hope the diplomats can find an agreement and that there will be peace in Ukraine.
I think nothing will happen. It's just the usual threats from the big bandit next door. There's nothing we can do. I have to work and feed my family. I don't have time to think about what I will do if something happens.
If something does happen, the U.S. has vowed to support Kiev. Ukraine is pushing for sanctions against Russia, but Washington says now is not the time.
But as to the sanctions, the most important thing we can do is to use them as a deterrent, as a means of dissuading Russia from engaging in further aggression. Once sanctions are triggered, you lose the deterrent effect. So what we're doing is putting together a whole series of actions that would figure into President Putin's calculus.
Moscow denies plans to invade its neighbor, yet up to 100,000 Russian troops have amassed at Ukraine's borders over recent months. The U.S. and the U.K. are sending military aid to Ukraine, with Baltic nations set to follow. The U.S. Secretary of State and EU foreign ministers are meeting via video link Monday to discuss a unified response to Russia.
Well, joining me now is DW Brussels Bureau Chief Alexander van Namen. Alexander, EU foreign ministers are meeting today there in Brussels. Their U.S. counterpart, Antony Blinken, will join them by video link. What can we expect from that gathering regarding the crisis in Ukraine?
Well, this crisis is, of course, front and center on the agenda here, and I think that we can assume that the foreign ministers are very eager to listen to Secretary Blinken and to get more information about his meeting with the Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov. They will talk about the crisis, what steps have to be taken next, and there will be a statement at the end of the day, a statement that is aiming to stress the EU unity and, of course, to send a strong warning towards Russia. And there will be, I think, two things that we should watch out for. One of them, whether the ministers will define what would trigger massive and severe consequences that they have announced. And the other thing would be interesting to see whether this statement will have any mention of the military training mission that the EU is considering in Ukraine.
Well, as mentioned earlier, the U.S. has ordered its embassy personnel, some of them anyway, out of Ukraine. The EU's top diplomat was asked for his response on that. Let's have a listen.
Well, Secretary Blinken will explain us the reasons of this announcement. We are not going to do the same thing because we don't know any specific reasons. But Secretary Blinken will inform us. And I don't think we have to dramatize. As far as the negotiations are going on, and they are going on, I don't think that we have to let Ukraine and leave.
So, Alexandra, the U.S. is pulling some of its people out of Ukraine. It doesn't sound like the EU is inclined to do the same thing, but are other countries not likely to follow suit now?
Well, that is very likely, actually, and we also have to assume that member states have their own contingency plans in case that we are going to see a confrontation there. There have been reports that Germany might be planning to evacuate its embassy staff, unconfirmed reports, and it will be very interesting to see whether the German foreign minister will have anything to say about that.
Well, you mentioned Germany. Berlin has refused to supply Kiev with defensive weapons. Other countries in NATO are doing that. What role is Germany playing in this crisis?
Well, as you know, as the biggest economy in the European Union, Germany is a powerhouse, and together with France, for instance, its close partner, they carry weight when it comes to foreign policy, to trade, whatever area in the European Union. However, so far, Germany has faced some criticism because of its what has been called its ambiguous position on Ukraine. They have been reluctant to provide Ukraine with weapons because the government is saying they do not provide any weapons to a country that is confronted with a crisis. And even though the German Chancellor Scholz said that in case of any Russian aggression against Ukraine, the new Nord Stream 2 pipeline could be cancelled. His government is still, for example, saying that we have to consider economic sanctions, but cutting off Russia from the international payment system, SWIFT, might be too much, going too far. So, as I said, again, it will be very interesting to see what the German foreign minister has to say here.
Alexandra, thank you for updating us on that. That was our Brussels Bureau Chief, Alexandra von Naumann, there in Brussels.
For more on this, I'm joined by Carolina Chimoy, who is in Washington, D.C. for us. What more can you tell us about the State Department order?
Well, Rahila, Secretary of State Antony Blinken gave an interview this afternoon, and he said that his highest responsibility is the safety and the well-being of the people who work for the State Department and who are under his care. And hours later, we learned that the State Department indeed ordered diplomats' families to depart the United States Embassy in Kiev due to the heightened fears of a Russian attack on Ukraine. The embassy has also authorized non-emergency employees to depart. The State Department also urged U.S. citizens in Ukraine to consider departing the country as soon as possible using commercial flights. And at the same time, a senior State Department official said that these are prudent precautions that in no way undermine the U.S. support for Ukraine, and that this decision has been made based on the military build-up in the region.
Yeah, so, I mean, there must be some clear significance here regarding this pullout of non-essential U.S. personnel in Ukraine, as we've also seen additional shipments of defense equipment as well.
They are different parts, and they are all making the situation there obviously more tense. And this is happening day by day. But it is also pretty clear that the United States, as well as Russia, they are both flexing their muscles. So we know that Russia, for example, has deployed troops, tanks and missiles along the Ukrainian border, and that Russian forces are now surrounding Ukraine on different sides. But also the United States has sent a military aid package and has delivered military equipment in Ukraine, and they of course want to show their support and their help to Ukraine on a military ground, and the UK has done the same. But still, Rahila, there are two important questions that are key to answer the big question if we are going to see military invasion and sanctions in the next days or weeks. The first question would be, what if Russia acts in a so-called gray zone, meaning a space between war and peace, like, for example, election meddling or cyber attacks? Would this be enough to make the the United States and its allies to impose sanctions. Russia could definitely also shape the fate of Ukraine with these kind of strategies and without the cost of a war. And secondly, will the West, meaning the United States and its allies in Europe, be united on the sanctions they would impose on Russia? Europe, and especially Germany, as you know, gets almost 70% of its gas from Russia. And at the end, the sanctions might be even worse for Germany and other countries in Europe.
Karina Chimoy in Washington, D.C. for us. Thank you very much.